All right, chapter 9, and then we'll proceed. The book opens up with a little vignette about that the dress styles of India has not changed much until about 1948. That the dress style of India is very loose-fitting, almost gown-like, and again, that's owing to the hot climate they have. Now, in 1948, some people in India began to adopt Western styles more. But up until then, they dressed the same way down through the centuries. And Gandhi, the Indian leader of up until 1948, Gandhi was very much in favor of dressing in the old habit, the old Indian style of wearing plain, mostly white clothes and very loose-fitting. It indicates that the Indian style hasn't changed that much. All right. The book opens up with the Silk Road. The Silk Road, of course, joined China to the Mediterranean. Now, there were times when the situation in India was so unstable, the Silk Road went farther north and completely avoided India. And there were times when it took a sea route and went up the Red Sea, across the Indian Ocean, but a lot of the time it passed through northern India and made northern India fairly wealthy. These traders would not only trade goods and services, they also apparently exchanged ideas. Now, Chinese religions, the change ideas include religion. Chinese philosophies and religions did not make any significant headway in India, but Buddhism, coming from India, did make a good bit of headway in China and made a lot of headway into Korea and some in Japan and a lot of headway down here in the Southeast Asia, the East Indies Islands, Indochina, places around here. Anyway, during the, around the year, about the time Christ was born, India was united, but then it became disunited, and that's where our chapter begins, with India in a state of disunity. And during the entire time that we're studying about the medieval period, India was never able to unite itself. Now, historians who have done comparative history will point out that apparently, even in North America, there was a decline in culture. Europe definitely had a decline with the fall of the Roman Empire and going into a period we call the Dark Ages. China had a decline, and India followed suit. Big decline in India during this period that might have been brought on by a climate change, or what we might call global cooling. Climate was cooling down, or apparently was cooling down. Here in the north, though, where the Silk Road went, some powerful Indian rulers were able to unite the northern part of India. The southern part remained in a state of disarray and disunity. And again, some people have said, and this is something you don't want to emphasize too hard, but a lot of times people who live in tropical climates do not advance as much as people who live in more temperate climates. So this part of India is more temperate. It also has some tall mountains. You know, about temperate, that means they have a summer and a winter. This part of India, they have a summer only, year-round summer and never a winter. And again, peoples who live in this part of the world, the tropical regions, tend to have advanced less culturally than people who live in the more moderate, temperate climates. Now, let me advise you again, like I said with this, don't worry about the name Maurya or don't worry about the Gupta, those dynasties. There were two dynasties, the Maurya dynasty, which had India mostly united, then the Gupta dynasty, which was able to unite the northern part of India and bring about what some people think was India's golden age. Don't worry about the names of dynasties. But what I do want you to remember is during this time, India almost adopted Buddhism. The Gupta monarchs embraced Buddhism, and in a lot of cases, when your king embraces a certain religion, the mass of people in the population follows. That happened in Europe. When European kings became Christian, the rest of Europe eventually did also. But in India, your monarchs became Buddhist, and it looked for a while like India would become Buddhist. But India did not. And your book spent some time speculating as to why. But essentially, Buddhism changed from being a religion of the poor monks living in monasteries in isolation away from the world and trying to forsake all desire and all want of this world. Instead, Buddhism began to build elaborate monasteries, very wealthy, and to accumulate a whole lot of wealth. Their monks, instead of isolating themselves from the rest of the world, began to mix in with the community and become a part of the community. And weirdly enough, while this was going on in India, the same thing or something similar was happening in Europe. And we don't know what the connection was between India and Europe. It was almost like India had an Ethernet connection to Europe, to put it in modern terms, a telephone line, telegraph line. But even though that's obviously not the case, but somehow what was going on in India was going on in Europe at the same time, except under a different religion. The Buddhists here, the Christians here. They were both building elaborate monasteries, elaborate places of worship, and both of them, their monks were becoming more and more involved in the rest of the world. Well, Buddhism again seemed to be threatening to take over, almost on the verge of taking over. But a few things went wrong with Buddhism, and eventually the Indian people went back to Hinduism. One of the reasons, probably perhaps the most important, that Buddhism did not make any headway in India, or maybe permanent headway, was Buddhism is egalitarian. Hinduism insists that some people are better than others and closer to nirvana than others. And they believe that apparently a person who's born to a really, really high caste might be just on the verge of nirvana, and maybe he can achieve it in the next life. Persons who are born into a low, low caste had a really bad previous life, and they're farther from nirvana and likely will not achieve nirvana at the end of this life. But the Indian people just seem to be comfortable feeling that some people are higher than others, some are better than others. I mean, we all do this to some extent. And Buddhism ran counter to that. Buddhism also appealed to the untouchables, and the higher caste said, "How what appeals to the untouchables does not appeal to us necessarily." So to make a long story short, eventually Buddhism started to decline in India. The decline was long and slow and gradual, and the people of India went back to Hinduism. And in fact, your book says it was so long and so slow and so gradual that you cannot assign a date to it. Just gradually, by a long, slow process, the people of India went back to Hinduism, more or less left Buddhism, and to this day, Hinduism is the official religion of India and the religion of most of its followers. Now, in the meantime, Buddhism, though, spread farther east, and Buddhism became the dominant religion of the civilized people in this part of the world. There's Korea, Vietnam, what is today Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. I said the civilized people. The uncivilized people still embrace animism, the religion I talked about last time. But the civilized people became more Buddhist than anything else. Well, a lot of them now, particularly in Indonesia, embrace Islam. But while Buddhism was making headway into this part of the world, which was not so steeped in the caste system, Hinduism took over India once again.